I'm going on a trip this week, which requires plane travel, but if you know me by now, you know that I'm going to want to knit while I'm on this plane. So what are the considerations that we need to keep in mind to have as smooth of an experience with the authorities on a plane as possible with knitting? This is the video where I'm going to take you through the entire process. I'm going to show you my planning that I have of what I'm going to bring with me, and then I'm going to kind of vlog style take you on my trip. So if you're interested in seeing how that goes, stick around and let's see what happens. Hello, welcome to Show and Tell Meg. I'm Megan and I like to make things, and so when I go on my plane trip, I want to be sure that I am able to make things while I'm on this trip. You know, airports in general, there's a lot of sitting around and waiting and then flying on the plane, waiting to get to your destination, right? I like to knit even if I have just a few minutes waiting for a doctor's appointment. So, of course, I want to bring knitting with me. I don't go on trips very frequently, so it's one of those things that it always makes me a little nervous. Am I going to get a TSA agent who does not like knitting or who thinks that these are weapons? These are things that we legitimately need to consider if we want to have things go successfully and not be disappointed when our tools are taken away from us and things like that. So the last time I went on a plane trip was several years ago, and this was the same strategy that I used then, and it worked very well. I would like to show you what it is that I bring with me and how I plan all of these things. Needles are probably the most controversial item that you may bring with you. Obviously, they're essential to knitting. And a lot of the ones I use, especially now, I like Chow-goos, and they are stainless steel and sharp. So to someone who has no idea what it is that I have in my bag and they just see these, sharp, skinny implements of death, it's understandable if they aren't a knitter that they might think that these could be used as weapons. And let's be real, I guess they could in a pinch. But I like to avoid any confusion with that by just bringing acrylic needles. I got this set for so cheap in a clearance sale at Hobby Lobby years ago. I want to say I paid like $7.50 for this entire set. These are Knitter's Pride. I can't remember the name of this set. I will post it here. To avoid any kind of potential issues, acrylic, plastic, it's the way to go, in my opinion. I could get this through security, and if I got somebody who did not agree that I should be able to bring these, at least I wouldn't be as devastated if they said I couldn't take them. It is worth noting that it is fully legal to bring knitting and crocheting supplies with you on a plane. I did look that up, and in the TSA guidelines, it says knitting and crocheting is allowed and it is fine, but so much is up to the person that you get when you go through security that day and their mood. And how they feel about it. If they don't want you to take them, then that's just it. I use this notion to try to get through that process as smoothly as possible. For the project I'm going to be taking this time, I don't need this entire pack of needles. I think I'm going to bring just the size 5, I believe is what I need. And I'll probably bring, 1 or 2 cables and a connector just in case I need to switch anything up. But it's handy if you have a set like this. They're very inexpensive and you can just throw them in your bag and everything's all together and you don't have to worry about it. So these are the needles that I'm going to be taking on this trip. And along with that, you need certain other tools, right? And my usual notions bag is this, which is pretty big and it's full of all kinds of things that I really don't need to take with me for just one simple project. So I will be leaving my adorable Soot Sprite notions bag home. I still haven't pulled out a small zipper bag to stick this stuff in, but I have pulled out kind of the essential tools. I will probably just take one darning needle out of here and keep it with my supplies. I have several, as I drop them, just lightning bulb stitch markers. I have a few of them. Realistically, I'm not going to need more than this. Definitely, whatever project you decide you're going to bring, read through your patterns, see how many stitch markers it suggests you have, and maybe bring a couple of extra just in case you drop them. I am very prone to do so, and that's also why I'm bringing the little light bulb ones, because I have a million of them. It's not devastating if I lose it in transit somewhere. And, you know, it is kind of essential to have scissors. So I actually purchased these years ago, and look, woo, my covert scissors here. But the important thing with scissors on a plane is you want them to be blunt. These are not sharp. This is not something that I could conceivably stab into my neighbor's chest, right? So I like that I can hook it on things and it's not super conspicuous. It won't make anybody nervous, but you could just bring kids scissors. They also have those like yarn cutter things that you can wear on like a necklace, things like that, if you were really worried about it. I'm going to be bringing these and hoping for the best. So, saying all that for my tools, what project am I going to bring? I have decided to make the Gatsby shawl, and this was entirely chosen by my yarn. So, I have these 2 skeins of Skein Australia. This is their El Merino yarn. It's 100% superwash merino, and this is the French lavender colorway. I picked these up secondhand with some of my other yarns that I got recently, and it's just really cool colors. It's a lot of gray mostly, and then there's just hints of purple. It's not what you normally think of for lavender, and I really love it for that. And then it has these kind of rusty pops throughout there, but it gives a bit of a purpley tone, but I think it's a really nice neutral. When I was seeing what other people had made with this yarn, that's one of the ways I like to decide if I want to buy a yarn, is to see what it looks like made up, if I can, on Ravelry. One of the projects that someone made was the Gatsby shawl, and I'll show a picture of the finished one that I saw that inspired this project. And I liked everything about how that came out. I think that the yarn complemented the pattern really well. It took the amount of yarn that I had. This person said they used 2 skeins. And when I was looking at that pattern a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, oh, that might be nice, and I'm entertaining other yarns that I have, I just kept coming back to this. So I'm just going to blatantly copy this lovely person, who I will put their name with their photo. I'm going to copy them because I think it's something I would really like wearing. So I have my 2 skeins here. Will I get through 2 skeins on one trip? I mean, probably not, let's say, unless I get stuck somewhere, which there's a hurricane coming through right now, so that's entirely possible. I'm going to be winding up both of these skeins and taking them with me just in case, you know, in case I end up with tons of time and can get a lot of knitting done. I don't want to end up bored with nothing to do. So that is what I'm going to make, and I'm going to make sure these are pre-wound. I'm going to read the beginning of the pattern. This is a free pattern, so I'll link it below if you're interested in making it as well. I like to read the beginning of the pattern at least. Sometimes shawls in particular have kind of weird ways that you start them, at least to me, because I don't make a ton of shawls. And so if I need to look into anything of instructions of how to do some particular aspect of it, I like to get that done ahead of time, just so that I'm aware. It's just garter stitch until you get to the border. So it's, I think, a good, reasonably mindless project that I can easily pick up and know where I'm at. So I'm looking forward to making this. And it also now will have the memories associated with it of going on this trip, which let's hope that that's good memories. So I'm going to wind this up and get everything in a project bag ready to go so that it can go in my luggage, that I am ready to head to the airport after this hurricane. Please, please, hurricane, don't mess up my trip. Well, I'm officially packing, getting all of my stuff ready to leave in the morning, and wouldn't you know that the needles I talked about that I planned on using for this trip, my size 5 does not tension down on the cord. So I guess that's kind of what you get with a cheap set of needles, unfortunately. But I happen to have some bamboo Knitter's Pride needles that I got also in the clearance at Hobby Lobby, and I have a size 5. Different needle, same project. Okay, this mess of stitch markers is the cast on, so I am officially prepped and ready to get on a plane. I am officially walking to the gates. Isn't that exciting? Alright, my plan worked. I got through just fine, other than maybe questionable shoe choice. So now we're headed on home. Alright, I am at the gate, and I have like an hour and a half before my flight leaves. So we're gonna sit and do some knitting. There goes the plane I just sprinted here to be on. 5 minutes and I would have made it. At long last, I have finally made it to Ohio. I have been traveling all day. I left my house at 8 a.m. It is 7:30 right now, or 7:45 p.m. I'm glad to leave. I am back in Florida, and I think you probably could see how it went, but I ended up with a lot of unanticipated knitting time, and therefore I finished this project, which when I planned this, I absolutely did not anticipate that happening. This was entirely thanks to Hurricane Milton. So I was supposed to leave on Thursday night, but that was the night that the hurricane had hit. And I was very lucky. We weren't hit directly. I was just on the outside. with where I live, but you know, we still had some pretty decent winds, and my yard was a mess, and I had all of the inconvenience of the shutters and the cleaning up. But thankfully, you know, we didn't have any flooding or anything like that. But it did cancel my flight. And then they rescheduled it for Friday, but they rescheduled everyone's for Friday. And so my flight that was supposed to leave at 11, therefore I was at the airport by 9. We were on the plane at like 1:15 and then stayed on the plane on the tarmac for like over an hour, probably an hour and a half with no AC. It was so hot. I traveled the entire day. That delay made me miss my connecting flight in Atlanta. And so I did not get to Ohio, which was my destination, until almost 8 o'clock at night. So from 9 a.m. till 8 o'clock at night, I got almost the entire garter section of this shawl done. And that's pretty crazy. If you've ever made a shawl, a triangular shaped shawl, they're always really deceptive. You know, you start with this teensy square, and I showed you the square that I started with when I got to the airport, like the night before I started it, and it was just this. And every row you're increasing. And so at first it feels like, yeah, I am sailing through this thing. But by the time you get to like here, these rows become really long, and then you're suddenly like, oh my gosh, am I ever going to finish this? Is usually how I feel with shawls. I don't make them a ton, but part of it is because every time I get to the end, I'm like, oh my gosh, these rows are so long. Is this ever going to be done? But it made for a really good project for this trip, I have to say. This pattern was ideal for this trip. I did knit in the airport for several hours in Orlando. I knitted in the airport in Atlanta. I knitted on both flights. I knitted in the car. I knitted when we were visiting friends in Ohio. Like I got so much stinking knitting done, and way more than I anticipated that I would for a trip, right? Like it was only because of so much of a delay that I managed to get this finished. And so I got to Ohio Friday night and I left very early Tuesday morning, and I bound off. I did the I-cord bind off, which took forever. It took me a solid 2 hours just to bind this thing off. I did that on Monday night before I left. So I got this project entirely finished on that trip, which is pretty cool. So I'm calling this my Ohio shawl. So what went great about it was, look how much garter stitch this is. There is not a more mindless thing you can do than just garter stitch where you increase here and here. I did not have to think about it. I could pick it up and put it down. This was absolutely a fantastic traveling project for that reason. I also love how this yarn looks. I love it in this light. You can actually see the bobbles and the bit of a wave you have going on at the border. But just the way this color worked up, it looks awesome. I think this is going to be a fantastic, fairly neutral-ish shawl that I can wear. I wear them as scarves, like around the front, kind of bandana style, I guess. Pattern-wise, I 100% recommend the Gatsby shawl. It is a free pattern, and this was just the perfect traveling knit. And incidentally, when I was getting on the plane in Orlando, I had absolutely zero trouble. And I don't know if that's because there were so many people in the airport. Like there were so many people that there were news crews standing in the atrium reporting on how many people there were that were trying to leave after Hurricane Milton. So I don't know if it was that they were trying to usher through as many people as possible. In my experience, that doesn't really play into how the TSA operates, but maybe. I got through completely fine with the materials that I brought. So my plan worked, and I'm very happy about that, because I would have been absolutely irate and miserable if I didn't have this project with me and all those delays had happened. Weirdly, I had way more struggle with the TSA getting on the plane in Ohio, not with my knitting materials, but other things that I had brought that I got in and out no problem in Orlando. So who knows, different places, different areas. And so that's why I like to make sure I have planned and I am prepared so that I don't end up with no knitting on a long trip. One thing that did not work out great was I had specifically selected the Gatsby pattern because it said that it took 600 yards of yarn. And the person who I copied, literally just they made the same exact yarn and that same exact shawl. They said that they used 2 skeins. Well, I had 2 skeins. And you'll notice I still have a full skein. I deliberately picked this shawl pattern because I thought it was going to be bigger and use up more of this yarn. And it didn't. And so now I have literally a whole skein. So now I have this entire skein left of this yarn. So my plan is I need to make like a hat or something to go with it because I really like this yarn. It's really nice. And this garter stitch in this is just like ultra squishy. I don't knit a lot of garter stitch, so it's kind of refreshing to have something so deliciously squishy and wool. But yeah, that was a little bit of a bummer to, I deliberately wound this up thinking I'm going to need both, and I have all this yarn left. I really like how this project turned out. I know I will wear this a lot in the winter, and so I'm very excited to have it. And it's now a really nice souvenir from my trip to Ohio. I finished that shawl and then I had another plane to catch the very next day. And so my last minute grab of a different project, I was very grateful for. Because I had everything already in the bag, I grabbed my Colorwork Cuff Club socks that I wanted to make. So I just grabbed my most inexpensive size 1 bamboo needles because, again, if they were taken from me, I wouldn't have been heartbroken. I have now switched to carbons, but I got 2 right here. I started this on the plane at 6 a.m. in Columbus, Ohio, and I got to right where this stitch marker is by the time I landed in Orlando. So I still had a project, and so it was the most random thing that I thought at the last minute, like maybe I should grab another project just in case I get bored with the shawl and I don't like knitting it or something like that, which thankfully did not end up being the case. I obviously had plenty of fun making that, but I got to there on a sock. I'm not very quick at color work. I don't have a ton of experience doing it, and I did not take my own advice because this was such a last minute project grab. I only brought size 1 needles, and when I got on the plane and I was reading the pattern, it tells you to start with size 1 and then go up to size 2 for the colorwork section and then go back down. So I was paranoid the whole time because I'm a very tight knitter anyway. And so I was stretching those stitches out on my needle, and it turned out to work out just fine. I also have a sock that will harken back to this trip. Speaking of souvenirs from Ohio, since I love yarn and knitting, we made it a point to go to a knitting store, and it was a complete fluke that we ended up at Dymad Yarns. It turns out that they are completely Columbus, Ohio based, that I was at their flagship store. This is where they dye everything. They had colors that were local to there, like everything was Ohio. And so it was kind of the perfect place to be. Also, that Saturday turned out to be I Love Yarn Day, which who makes these days? I don't know. But therefore, they had a pop-up shop for Supernova yarns, which was all fluorescent, like blacklight activated yarn, which was way cool. And they had a sale going on. So, this was my main souvenir. I love these colors that I got, but there is some significance to them as well. This one, this is emerald, which, gosh, this is my favorite color green. It is beautiful. It is so vibrant. It's got some really cool tonality to it. This one I contemplated quite hard of getting a sweater quantity. Unfortunately, because it's hand dyed, there is variation from skein to skein, and they had 2 skeins that looked great together, like they were similarly toned. And then the other two skeins that they had in this same yarn, which is Chester Sock, it had, one of them was significantly like a step darker overall, and another one had like these lighter spots, like almost whitish lighter spots. And so I knew looking at this, it just wasn't going to jive. Like it was not going to be even enough. I'm fine with tonality and I'm fine with alternating skeins, but it was too big of a difference and I knew I wouldn't have been happy with it. So I did not buy a sweater quantity. I just got the one. And so I'm trying to decide what to do with it, but it happens to match this other one really well. So this is called Cornhenge. And I also put video of me at Cornhenge in Columbus. It's this field full of person-sized ears of cement corn. I believe it's to commemorate the person who first genetically altered corn or something like that. Which is, everything comes full circle because in 9th grade, I did a science project about genetically modified corn. So now I have been to the Mecca, I guess. But so this one is Cornhenge, which makes sense because you have all this concrete color. And then you have flecks of green, which is exactly like what it was when I was there. And these two look really good together. It has the same flecks of green in there. So I'm kind of contemplating. I actually saw a mosaic style shawl that was released while I was there. And so I bought that pattern and I'm kind of contemplating that. But then I'm also kind of contemplating maybe trying brioche. I have never knitted brioche, and so these two complement each other well, but they're really contrasty. So I don't know. I'm trying to decide what to do. Do I do them individually? Do I put them together? We will see. And then the last skein that I got is called Honk. So the mascot of Dye Mad Yarns is this goose. I think the goose might be named Honk, actually. I didn't ask. But he's in everything. He's on the labels. They had pins, they had stitch markers, they had all these things. And this particular color is all the favorite colors of the people who work at Dye Mad Yarns, which I thought was really cool. They had a different colorway that was designed as their flagship color that you could only get from that location, but it just wasn't my colors as much as this one was. So this one's not quite as, this is just specific to here, but it is all the people who work there chose these colors, and I think that they're really pretty. And this goes with me better than the other set of colors. So I am super excited about this one. I think I'll probably do some kind of shawl or something. I don't know, like I could make socks out of any of these. They're sock yarn, but I mean, this just feels too pretty to hide under your shoes, right? And because it was I Love Yarn Day and they were having that pop-up shop of the Supernova yarns, they gave away these little stitch markers. They gave away these really cute stitch markers. It's their goose with the like atomic yarn symbol back there, the Supernova yarns thing behind his head. And it's on my favorite type. It's a lever back. They gave me that with our purchase. And so that was really fun. So I had a lot of fun in Ohio and I got yarn. We ate fantastic food and saw fun things. I got to experience a local's favorite version of Columbus, Ohio, which is just really fun. I had a lot of fun in general. I had a ton of fun in the yarn store. The people were super nice. It was a really cute store. And I now have this to remember my trip to Columbus, Ohio. So if you are going on a trip on a plane and you would like to take knitting with you, please keep some of these things in mind. It worked out really great for me. And oh my gosh, to sit in that airport for that many hours with nothing to do but look at my phone, I would have gone crazy. I hope that my experience with this can help other people. I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that you enjoyed the little glimpse of Dye Mad Yarns and my project. So if you are interested in any of the things that I have talked about in this video, I will have anything relevant linked below. If you did like this, please do give me a thumbs up and subscribe. It really helps me get to other people in the algorithm. I hope that you want to stick around because I have plenty of other things coming. I got to make projects with all of this fantastic yarn. So if you are curious to see what these get turned into eventually, stick around and I hope to see you next time. That was fancy yarn. My main souvenir from Ohio was